Welcome to another edition of One More Light with me, Val Kleinhans. Alia Thomas is in the building today. She is a content creator and mental health advocate who shares thoughts on grief and anxiety. She's a wonderful photographer as well. Alia, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's very honored to be asked to come on here.
Of course. Well, I love what you do. Love the photos that you take. Love the messaging behind little love notes, all this good stuff.
Thank
Yes,
you.
the beginning is as good a place as any to start. What has your own mental health journey been like?
Um, I have sort of experienced anxiety or a greater level of anxiety for a lot of my life, unfortunately, as many people do. But it kind of so I've kind of gone through that for many years, throughout my childhood, teenage years, and sort of up until recently, I guess. But I also lost my mum at a young age, as a teenager, so I kind of went through the ebbs and flows of grief as well. Obviously that kind of can increase levels of anxiety and depression episodes as well, in terms of losing such a core person in my life. But I'm sort of glad to say that that's certainly in the past few years, I guess since the pandemic, actually, funnily enough, that I've been able to really work on that and sort of come through the other side of the worst of it. But yeah, it's been one of those things. Unfortunately, I'm one of the people that have sort of struggled with these things for quite a few years. But in the end, I have been, like, fortunately able to sort of help other people, like, through that. So
Right.
good things come out of bad situations sometimes. So
Well, sometimes they do. I mean, and I've been through the same thing. I mean, I've dealt with depression and anxiety definitely since I was 27 for sure. Probably
mm,
before that. I don't know.
yeah,
I guess I say that age because that's when I've got like my first prescription for
yeah,
antidepressants. And I was like, okay, I guess this is official now. But
yeah,
and there's no one size fits all answer for any of those things, whether it's grief, depression, anxiety. Everybody has their own way of navigating that whole thing.
yeah.
You mentioned something very interesting, which I have a theory about, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. You said
Mm,
the pandemic was a time where you were able to really focus on getting through that grief and just kind of hunkering down. Is that
mm.
because you had more time to yourself like the rest of the world did? And just like we literally, like, that's all we could do was focus
Yeah, I
on the
mean, it was definitely part of it. So I think towards the end of 2019, I went through a pretty big period of burnout. Like, my anxiety got really, really bad. I'd had quite a busy year that year in terms of moving house, like moving jobs. So it was quite a big year anyway, for me in terms of life stuff. But yeah, I really, like, I got to a bad place, let's say, at the end of 2019, and got to a point where I really thought I need to do something about this because this is really, really affecting me now. And I mean, I don't know if it's a bad thing to say that, like, the pandemic came at a good time, because I mean, it was a horrible situation, but, like, personally, for my personal growth and, like, my like sort of healing through the anxiety and the burnout and getting over that, it definitely started a positive change for me, because yeah, you do have so much. I mean, we were locked in for so long, and all you kind of have to do is, because my job also, I was furloughed for a month or two, which means that I guess you had potentially had similar stuff in the US, but, like,
Yeah, me
our
too.
government, our
Like
government paid
we had
for.
this weird like period where you were working from home for 1 week and then you were on site 1 week, and
Mm,
it was about a month of that furlough, and then you had like 2 weeks where you were furloughed, but then you came back. They arranged it in a bunch of different ways as the situation developed, but yeah, we
yeah.
were struggling with it here too. Same thing.
Yeah, so I mean, I was off work essentially for a month or two, which obviously gave me a lot of time to, like, just well, it could have been just sitting around the house doing nothing, but that wouldn't have done anything for me. So
Right.
I guess you sort of pick up habits that you kind of work on in terms of making you feel better, and that was like a bit of exercise. And I actually started a course of therapy during that time as well, which was very beneficial. Yeah, and just kind of like, I mean, a lot of walks just to get a bit of fresh air, and get out the house. And yeah, just I think that certainly helped me to have a greater appreciation of smaller things in life, which I think helped me a lot, because when you're in an anxious place, everything sort of seems horrible, and like you don't necessarily see the light very often. So in that sense, the pandemic was helpful because it gave me that time and space to do that work. Yeah.
There's nothing else distracting you from just doing that.
No, exactly.
Makes
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Do you remember
Yeah.
the first time that you decided to take your thoughts on mental health and your own mental health journey public onto social media?
Yeah, I'd been into like I'm a fan of writing anyway. I do enjoy writing, and I sort of had ideas of doing a blog, like on and off. And I think during the time of being furloughed, I thought, well, this is a good enough time to do it, because I've got
Right.
this time I've got the time on my hands. And actually, I thought that it could be a way of like helping myself as well, a form of therapy, I suppose. Self-healing. So yeah, I kind of like, I was really scared to do it as well, because I was like, oh God, what if like people take it badly, or like, I don't know, like what if people don't enjoy, well, not enjoy it, but what if people don't connect with it, or again, the anxious brain of what if all of these negative what if situations. But yeah, I was just like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I just started it one day, and it formed a good habit, certainly throughout that year of 2020, to get me sort of speaking about it. And I think people really like connect with like vulnerability. Like, not enough people are vulnerable in the world,
Right.
unfortunately, I don't think. And I'm not saying you have to shout about it on the internet, but even like with friends and family, not enough people are open about their problems. So and it's not until you start speaking about it that you realize that so many other people are like feeling similar things, or like experiencing similar stuff, maybe in slightly different ways. But yeah, I just kind of like decided that I was going to do it, and I did it, and it turned out okay. So
It's amazing when
yeah.
it does too. Like I mean, when I started
Yeah.
doing it, I was surprised at the feedback that I was getting. They're like, thank God somebody's saying something, or we never talked
Yeah.
about this in our house. So thank you for putting that out there. Or I have actually felt the same way, but I didn't have the courage to admit it until
Mm.
now. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure you've gotten the same thing too.
Yeah.
I was curious as to why the specific focus on anxiety and grief.
I think, I mean, anxiety is probably more widely spoken about, certainly from my knowledge anyway. But I do feel that grief is a bit of a taboo subject still. Like, it's
Mhm.
people just don't talk about it. And I lost my mum when I was 16, so it was quite a poignant age for me. And like, your friends at that age, like like anyone, like, you don't know what to say. Like, I've experienced like my friends losing people since, and I still don't necessarily know everything to say, because it's just such a different thing for everyone. But yeah, I think I just felt like, because that was such a, I mean, obviously it was such a poignant thing for me in my life, losing my mum. um and yeah, I to be honest, had not really spoken about it generally very much since then. And that was, Christ, that was like 12 or so years ago at that point. So I don't know, I thought that was a good avenue to go down, to try and again bring that subject to the forefront for, you know, a few more people, and maybe it can help someone along the way, you know, who's going through a bad time for that reason. So yeah, it's just one of those things.
You're so right, though. I mean, we don't always know what to say.
No.
And it's inevitable that we're all going to experience some form of grief in our life. You know,
Yeah.
you could even say that going through a divorce is a form of grief. You're like
Yeah,
mourning the
yeah.
loss of that marriage. Like one way or another, we're all going to experience it, and we really don't know what to say. So,
Yeah.
as somebody who's sort of been through it and had their own experience with it, do you think that there is a best way to support somebody who is grieving? And what would that be?
Well, obviously it will be different for everyone, but personally I do think, I mean, listening is a good start at the very least. Like, just being there for your friend or family member who is going through that. But also I think to not forget that that person should just be hushed then, in terms of like forgotten about the person who has been lost, because I think that was one of the things that I certainly, reflecting on it, realize now, is that, you know, my family, obviously my close family, would mention my mum, but even then we wouldn't really like talk about her that much, like since she passed away. And certainly with my friends, it's not something that like would outwardly come up in conversation to sort of mention her, or like, you know, because and I completely appreciate it, because I completely understand, because there is an awkwardness about it, you know, like, again, you don't know how someone's going to react, you don't know if you're going to make someone just burst out into tears, and then there's potential awkwardness, you know, around that scenario as well. Not that there should be, because everyone cries, but you know, like, it's just one of those things. So I do think, like, I think it's important to keep the conversation up, or keep that person in conversation. Like, you know, they're not gone, like, well, they're gone, but they're not, for that person, they're not gone forever, because you know, you always have that person with you still, in one way
Acknowledge the
or another.
impact they made.
Yeah, like, you know, so I think just not to sort of like, yeah, not to essentially forget about that person now that they're gone, you know, because the person who's grieving obviously will have them very much in the forefront of their mind for quite a while, probably. So it's a big adjustment to go through at any age. So, you know, but it is a sensitive subject as well. You got to gauge it, I guess. But I would personally say that listening, for one thing, is at the very least very important. But secondly, to keep talking about them and appreciating the person who's been lost.
Yeah, and let people feel whatever it is that they feel.
Yes, definitely.
As it happens, because there is no manual.
No,
None at all.
exactly.
I know you love photography. I'm curious to see if maybe you have found that photography could be used as a tool to help your own mental health and to stay mentally healthy.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that I started doing during the pandemic, was taking photos of pretty much anything and everything that gave me a little spark of joy, you know, on my walks and things like that. So, and again, I think that's the appreciation of the smaller things in life that kind of like helped me. So, you know, I'd take pictures of flowers or birds or the sea. I love the sea, like the ocean, you know, like the ocean's my happy place. So like I'd go for walks on the beach and take pictures of the ocean and just things like that. So that sort of part is quite simple, really, just taking pictures of the things that I love. But I mean, I think it's good to have a focus. And for me, photography is part of my work anyway, so it gave me a focus on my work. However, sort of coming through that, it also opened up quite a few opportunities for me. So another passion of mine is music, and I've been very grateful enough to fortunate enough to shoot a lot of live music concerts, you know, and that's a sort of therapy for me, because, you know, music is healing in itself. That's one of my therapies, and I think to be able to do that through photography as well, and capture those moments for people to remember, or even if they weren't at the gig, to feel those things as well. That's important for me as well. So yeah, it's been an interesting what do you call it, development, I suppose.
Yeah, no, we all, I think, need something like that that brings us joy in our life, whether it's a hobby or something we take maybe more seriously, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
We all need that. We all need that little thing that makes us feel human, because so much of what else is going on doesn't, in my opinion.
exactly.
The workplace,
Exactly.
or the amount of responsibility that we have just as adults, like, whoo, you can get lost in it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Recently you took a solo road trip, and I'm so jealous, because I always wanted to do that. But you mentioned, well, first off, how was it? Was it fun? Because it looked fun.
I mean, it had its challenges, I won't lie, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was such a good experience, and I'm so glad that I did it, because
Yeah.
that was one thing that, you know, I wouldn't have done a few years ago, definitely not.
Right. You did mention that, like, I had a little bit of anxiety around just doing it. So
Mm.
what did you do to just turn that off and say, I'm gonna do it, I don't care?
I kind of like, it was niggling at the back of my mind like last year anyway, and I think some circumstances just sort of made me realize that, do you know what, life is short, like you need to go and do these things. And I think one of the reasons, like, I lost my nan at New Year, unfortunately, so again you get that perspective, like, not change, but you get that dose of like perspective almost. So I left it very last minute. I went in like mid-March. I'd always had in mind I wanted to go in spring, and I was like, it's going to be getting a bit nicer then, you know, and the flowers start coming out and things like that, be a bit prettier. So I kind of like decided, right, okay, it's going to be mid-March, but it probably wasn't until like February, like mid-February, that I'd actually like planned any of it. So like, you know, it was a bit last minute, impromptu, but yeah, I kind of thought, this, like, life is too short to like not do these things, especially if you've got such an urge to do them, then why not, you know?
Yeah. Is there anything else on that list of things that you still want to do?
Probably another one, like maybe, I don't know.
So good. Let's do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, do one elsewhere, or like, I don't know, I mean, maybe an abroad one, if I get the courage. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be so many things. I can't think of them right now, but another road trip's definitely on there. Definitely on there.
Yeah. I mean, but I'm happy you were grounded. You were grounded in your thinking there. You're like, oh, the truth is there's not a lot of time here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can either do this or not. It really is that simple.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
we forget that. Sometimes it is easier, and it does take a lot away a lot of that worry when we just break it down to, it's either A or B, really.
Mm,
At
yeah.
the end of the day,
Exactly.
do we want to
Yeah.
do this or do we want to do that?
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask about Little Love Notes UK. Tell me about that. What's going on with that?
So Little Love Notes is like basically a little thing that I thought up of last year again as well. It kept coming back to me as well for like the past year previously. Like, it's essentially the idea of touching back on the whole grieving process, you know, not knowing what to say necessarily. The idea sparked from that, in terms of trying to help people who have others around them that are going through that grieving process, but they don't necessarily know what to say. So that was kind of like the initial niche idea. It has, however, sort of like, I kind of made it a bit more like generic, I suppose, just to open it up to more people. And yeah, just the idea of sort of like having these cards that say little messages, little quotes, to maybe spark a conversation, or just to get some little message over that you may feel hard to say in person,
Mm,
or
I
just
get it.
yeah, just to sort of like almost like spark that idea of being able to say what you feel.
Yeah.
So on the front, there'll be a little quote, and then on the back in the corner it'll say like, just to say, and then leave a blank back, so you can, just a little note to say, and then you can sort of like write whatever it is that you wanted to say, essentially. But I just thought that was a nice little way potentially of making it easier for people to say things to others that they may not feel that they can actually physically say out loud. But sometimes things are easier written down, aren't they? So,
Yeah. I don't
yeah,
know why, but that's me too. I'm definitely more of a writer. Like if I write something down, I feel like I've gotten whatever's going on out.
yeah,
And sometimes I can articulate myself better when I just write it and
exactly,
get it out. And the thing with
exactly.
love notes, I mean, if you're trying to bring a verbal conversation into the mix, or you're trying to approach that person in person,
Mm,
sometimes we're not always ready for that
exactly.
interaction.
Yeah,
Sometimes we're not always in the space to deal with that or do with that. So the nice thing about little love notes is that person on the receiving end can take a look at that whenever they want. It's
exactly.
up to them whenever they're prepared
Yeah,
for. Or that's so I think it's smart to do that.
yeah.
Was that intentional? Did that come into your mind when creating this?
Yeah, I kind of had the notion that maybe things are easier to write down because, again, like, well, yeah, that's kind of where my blog came from. Was it was easier to write about these things than necessarily talk to people about the stuff that I'd struggled with. So I kind of had that in mind, that could be a good way of looking at it, a good place for it to come from. So yeah, and I kind of I try to make them like nice little almost, like you could frame it and put it on your wall if you wanted to, or you could
Yeah.
stick it on your fridge, and it'll look like a nice little print as well. So, try
It's
to make them
great.
look nice.
If
Yeah.
I got one, I would probably put it in a space where I know I'm easily stressed, like
Mm.
my cubicle or something, for lack of
Yeah,
a better term.
yeah,
I would be like, let
yeah,
me put it there, because at least there I can just take a moment, get a little bit of joy from that, and all right, now I'm focused, and now I can get back to doing whatever it is I have to do.
exactly. That's exactly, like, that's definitely what I wanted. Yeah, just so that you can like have that little reminder of that someone's thinking about you, or that little message that you need to see. And then, yeah, take a moment and then go again. It's all
So
good.
what is next for you? What are you looking forward to, whether it's online or just in general? That's a general question. What are you looking forward to?
So I'm looking forward to, basically, I've recently taken the leap into freelancing, so I'm looking forward to really getting excited. Well, I am excited about it, but like, really sort of like pushing that in ways that I do not yet know, but
Mhm.
you never know where these things are going to come from, do you know? But also, yeah, just to try and I've been intending on getting back on the writing again, so I'm hoping that, like, I can get back into that and sort of start getting excited about that again. I'm just, in all honesty, I'm just looking forward to the warmer weather and summer in the
Oh,
UK.
tell me about it.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm in Minnesota in the States, so
yeah.
we've had winter since like December, and
Oh yeah,
we're only just kind of coming out of it now. It's
yeah.
slowly. We're in like the low 60s today, and flowers haven't even really come up yet. We're still kind of just
Really?
we're seeing like a little bit of green right now, but
Yeah.
it's taking its time.
Oh well, fingers crossed they come soon, because yeah, I love the springtime when the flowers come out. It's a lovely time. And but yeah, I do need a bit of warmer weather though, I think.
We all do.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Alia, thank you so much for chatting with me. Thank you for being with
No
me. Thank you
worries.
for words of wisdom. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me again. It's been lovely chatting with you.